and gents, I say shalom, Islam, peace to all. You're now under the sounds of the voice of Brother Tazadaq. I believe I have Brother Dowd tuning in as well. And we have Marcus, the undaunted Moore, tuning in as well. And what this lecture is basically about is child support at debtor's prison, part 2. A few months ago, I actually done a video entitled Child Support at Debtor's Prison. Some may have tuned in, some may have not. I actually had a question and answering form at such time. Many people didn't get to ask their question, so we decided to actually do another show to give you the opportunity, and we shall actually entertain some of your questions to the best of our ability, and hopefully therein leave you with some remedy to your questions, and to prevent you actually from going in dishonor. So we ask if you have any questions to actually, call in and answer, ask your questions rather than actually, asking them through the text message, the chat room. I mean, however, there is a chat, but my primary focus would actually be upon responding to the questions on the live broadcast here. So if you actually want to tune in, you can tune in via your Google Plus account. So if you actually have a Google Plus, just go to your Google Plus and sign in. You could actually look for me, the Undaunted National, or to be a free national on Google Plus, and you'll actually be able to chat that way. Call in and ask your questions via Google Plus. So to all of you that's actually not logged into Google Plus, can you please do so? And I'll try and give you some time to do such at this time before we actually officially get started. So, you can find me on, to be a free national at gmail.com on my Google Plus account, or the Undaunted National. And again, this broadcast is taking place live now as we speak. Child Support at Debtor's Prison, part 2. And this is primarily for those of you that actually did not get the opportunity. So by all means, do tune in, tell a friend, anyone that you actually may know that could be actually possibly having a problem with this child support on this debtor's prison that's causing many of our people excruciating financial, pain, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm looking for Brother Elia. Are you there? Are you on the call, Brother Elia? I'm gonna pause for a minute here and try to give more people an opportunity to come in and ask your questions. So tune into the call now. Right now, please, live. on Hangout. Go ahead and, if you would, befriend me on the Hangout account. If you've actually already befriend me, then you could actually go ahead and tune in. If any of you actually have questions, then please feel free to ask your questions. This is actually an open forum for those of you that may be actually having problems with this debtor's prison known as child support. And again, this is actually being shared on Google Hangout. Again, I am your host, Tazadaq. So, it may not be a crime to be poor, but it can actually land you behind bars if you are behind on your child support payments. Some of you may be familiar with that. Some of you may not be. And many of the sisters do not care. As long as they get that check, which often are not being spent on the sons and daughters. Now, thousands of so-called deadbeat dads, I'm going to use deadbeat dads instead of mothers and fathers, because the primary victims of this crime is fathers. So thousands of deadbeat dads, that they refer to them as, are jailed each year in the United States after failing to pay court-ordered child support. Now, the vast majority of them some, they claim these men are withholding or hiding money out of spite or feeling that they've been unfairly gouged by the courts. Now, that's the lie that is what many of these judges are suggesting to justify throwing these people behind bars. But in what might seem like an American plot twist from a Charles Dickens novel or something of the sort, actually advocates for the poor, many fathers are saying, are wrongly being locked away without any regard for their ability to pay, and sometimes without the benefit of what many of you refer to as lawyers, attorneys, or legal representation. Now, for instance, Randy Miller, a 39-year-old Iraqi war vet, a man that served his country in war, put his life on the line, found himself in that situation last November when a judge in Floyd County, Georgia, sent him to jail for violating a court order to pay child support. Now, he said he was stunned when the judge rebuffed his argument that he had made regular payments for more than a decade before losing his job and had recently resumed working. And I'm going to quote the man. He said, "I felt that with my payment history and that I had just started working, maybe I would be able to convince the judge to give me another month and a half to start making the payments again." Now, this man, he came on MSNBC and made this statement. Now, but that didn't sit well with him, meaning the judge, because he went ahead and decided to lock me up in the court. Now, in a class lawsuit filed in March that seeks to force the state of Georgia to provide lawyers for, poor so-called non-custodian parents facing the loss of their freedom for failing to pay child support. Now, supposedly debtors' prisons are illegal in the United States, but languishing in jails for weeks, months, and sometimes over a year, many of these fathers and some others, some, but very little, share on this trait, that most of these people are poverty-stricken. They went to jail without ever taking on an attorney. Now, according to the lawsuit filed by the nonprofit Southern Center of Human Rights in Atlanta. So while jailing these non-paying fathers mostly, the vast majority of them, again, is always men, does lend to payment in many cases. Now, many of these critics say that it unfairly penalizes poor and unemployed parents who have no ability to pay. And even though federal law stipulates that they must have willfully violated a court order, that they must have willfully violated a court order before being incarcerated. Now, I want you folks to keep in mind that the burden of proof is on the plaintiff. Now, have you willfully violated a court order? That's the question. So you take their own statutes and you use them against them. So they compare the plight of these fathers to the poor people co-signed to the infamous debtor prisons. Debtors prisons. Before such institution was actually outlawed in the 1800s. Now, I try extremely carefully not to exaggerate, but I do think that's an appropriate comparison. It's an appropriate comparison. And I think anyone who went down and watched any of these proceedings, or, would agree with me. You see, a room full of indigent parents, of poverty-stricken parents, most of them, what you refer to as so-called African Americans, so-called blacks, the so-called Negroes, and you have a judge and an attorney general, both or whom or what they refer to as white. Now, this is not racism. I'm telling the truth, and the truth shall make you mad, then make you free. See, the hearing often takes only about 15 seconds. Approximately 15 seconds, the judge asks, do you have any money to pay? Then the person pleads, subject himself to the jurisdiction, and the judge says, okay, you're going to jail. Then he or she adds the threat of jailing the delinquent father, usually, is intended to coerce them to pay. But in rare occasions, it can have any tragic results. So, last June, a New Hampshire father who was a military veteran, Thomas Bell, died after dosing himself with gasoline and setting himself ablaze in front of Chester County Courthouse. So, in a long, rambling letter to the local Sentinel newspaper, the 58-year-old Bell stated he did so to focus attention on what he considered unfair domestic violence laws, and because he expected to be jailed at an upcoming hearing on his failure to pay up to $3,000 in delinquent child support, even though he had been out of work for 2 years. So the ability of judges to jail fathers and some others without a trial is possible because failure to pay child support is usually handled as a civil matter, meaning that the non-custodian parent or the contemptor, in legal terms, is found guilty of contempt of court in order to appear at a hearing. And he or she is actually not entitled to some constitutional protections that the criminal defendants receive. Boy, that is something, including the presumption of innocence. So, in five states, brothers and sisters, Florida, Georgia, Maine, South Carolina, and Ohio, one of the admitted protection is the right to an attorney. Now, Randall Kessler, a family law attorney in Atlanta and the chairman of the American Bar Association's Family Law Division, said that states have a great deal of leeway in family law, which actually includes child support cases. The main reason states are actually patchwork is because family law is a local idea. This man said it is very infrequent that the federal government gets into family law, except for international custody every now and then, and violence against women. So each community's laws are different in the way that they treat child support collections, and the right to a lawyer and the right to a jury trial varies. This is violation of the Constitution, folks. This is unconstitutional. Did not they take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the Republic? Did not the judge do that? Did not the lawyer do that? Now, this man noted that, ABA last year approved a resolution urging federal, state, and territorial governments to provide legal counsel as a matter of right at public expense to low-income parents in adversarial proceedings where basic human needs are at stake, such as those involving shelter, sustenance, safety, health, or child custody. Now, the Supreme Court is stating that these men has no right to a lawyer. The child support program currently serves approximately 17 million U.S. children, or nearly a quarter of the nation's minors, according to a recent study by Elaine Sorensen, a senior fellow of the Urban Institute. Now, critics of the incarcerations without representation had hoped that the U.S. Supreme Court would end this practice in its ruling in Turner versus Rogers, a case involving a South Carolina man who had repeatedly been jailed for up to a year after failing to pay child support. But the court ruled 5-4 that the poor parents were not entitled to a court-appointed attorney when facing jail for non-payment of child support. Is that justice? This is your government. This is what you signed up for. This is who you're voting into office. Now, so instead, the justice says states should use substantial procedural safeguards to ensure that those who have no means to pay are locked up. So that is likely to force the states that don't guarantee the right to an attorney to tighten the policies. Do you understand? Do you understand? Ken Wolf, a spokesman for the Federal Administration for Children and Families, who actually imposes some rules on state child support enforcement agencies in exchange for funding, said that these agencies expect to issue more. So they're saying these deadbeat parents, primarily fathers, deadbeat dads, are caught in a debtor's prison. So on any given day, Georgians down in the state of Georgia, the great state of Georgia, are jailed for failing to pay child support. Family law attorney says many of these deadbeats are right where they belong. Wow. But many fathers are being jailed even though they have no ability to pay, created modern day debtors prison. Modern day debtors prison. The state should provide lawyers to indigent parents for their civil contempt to ensure due process of law. This is not due process of law, folks. This is not due process of law. And many of you say, well, I don't need to know the law. I don't need to know anything about law. Well, you better learn something. You better learn something, folks. You know, there are a lot of sons and daughters out there with parents. So, this man, Lee Ward said, who just don't pay. And for every dollar that they're not paying, someone else has to pay. This is what this man, Lee Ward Sears said. And he said, too often is the taxpayers. But it is illegal, folks, to incarcerate someone who has no ability to pay. It's illegal. This country claims not to believe in a debtor's prison, but you're finding out that they really do. That they really do. The U.S. Supreme Court will actually consider this issue, supposedly, you know, but you know how that goes. You know how that goes, brothers, sisters. Now, North Carolina, for example, has actually been providing attorneys in child support cases since 1993. Court ruling actually required state to do so. But last year, North Carolina paid more than $3 million to appointed lawyers in child support cases. But in Georgia, after finding the parent in contempt, judges set a purge fee, which is typically below the amount of child support that is owed. Now, what this is, if the parent can't pay the purge fee, they go to jail. They go to jail. So over the past decade, brothers and sisters, 3,612 people, each serving an average of 127 days, were incarcerated in Gwinnett County for failing to pay child support according to their jail records. Now, we've seen some who've actually been jailed come up with 15,000 to 20,000 in a couple days. That's what a sheriff Butch Conway said. Some will languish for months and not be able to come up with 100 to 200. Some can't pay it, but sadly, I think some do have the money, but just don't want to pay. And this is how these people think, man. This is how these people think. Now, going back to Randy Miller again was a veteran, and he sits in a Floyd County jail facing $3,000 purge fee he can't pay. Now, he said in a statement provided to the Atlanta Journal by his lawyers, when Miller, the 39-year-old man, lost his job as an AT&T service technician in 2009, this man struggled to keep up with his $452 a month child support payment for his 16-year-old daughter. Now, he eventually saw his home go into foreclosure and wind up with only 39 cents in the bank, and these people did not give a damn. This is what they think of you. This is what they think of you, according to his court records. Last November, the man was jailed for 4 months for failing to pay an estimated of $4,400 in child support. See that? See that? This is what's going on. This is what's going on. And Miller, he said he may try to re-enlist into the military when he gets out of jail as a way to secure a more consistent income. But the man's worried that he may be too old. See, this is what's going on. This is what they call law. So brothers, sisters, it's going to take a whole lot of love and knowledge to get you out of this one. You got to remember that you are the source of power, your unity. You got to remember that man is the source of authority. Man, in his proper capacity, is sovereign. Islam, the judge, is a position It was created by man. The courtroom was created by man, to be controlled by man, to bring about justice. But it seems like what you're getting is just us being plagued and tormented with this illegal that is prison. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it, brothers and sisters? What are you prepared to do about this? That's the question. Now, that is my introduction. The floor is now open for questions. If there's anyone that actually has any questions, now is the time to ask your questions, or forever hold your questions.